Hey everybody, welcome to the Woman-Owned Small Business Federal Certification Training, How to Ensure Your WOSB Certification is Ready for Federal Contracts, Part 2, sponsored by FedBiz Exchange at fedbizexchange.com. I'm Michelle Brown, founder of FedBiz Exchange Programs, and we're here supporting you and your business through free government contracts and training programs. So today we're going to review part 2 of the WOSB application process, and we're going to answer all the application questions and upload the documents and talk about updating SAM. In part 1, we talked about the 3 main objectives for training. We decided to break this down so that you can do this in 2 parts if you needed to. So the first part was to help you understand in summary what the program is all about, because I really believe that people tend to forget what the certifications stand for, and they definitely don't understand in most cases how the WSB works. We also in part 1 talked about your eligibility, how you need to comply and how you qualify. All of that's important because if you don't comply and you don't legally qualify, you could win a federal contract and lose it. You could also be penalized or even have criminal prosecution against you. So you don't want something like that to happen. I've seen it happen before. It's rare, but it definitely happens. So let's get to part 3 of the actual application process. And so in part 2, the part 3 objective in part 2, we're talking about the certification process itself, walking you through it, assuring that you get things organized, that you're prepared, and that you submit the appropriate paperwork correctly. Okay, and so for most of you that have done this already, you need to know that the process has changed. There have also been some updates with the NAICS codes, and we're going to talk about that. So now that we are in part 2 on the third objective, let's talk about that you need to go to Certify.SBA.gov to log in, and I'll walk you through a little bit of that process. We'll cover all of the details of the application process, but I just want to make sure that I cover some things first. So the first thing you're going to do is go to Certify.SBA.gov. And just so that you know, everything for small businesses will be placed in Certify.SBA.gov. They're actually moving the 8A process completely into Certify.SBA.gov, which is awesome, and I'll show you why. But you know, it really does help to simplify the process, and that's what they're trying to do. So your WOSB is going to be in Certify.SBA.gov. The full process has already been migrated to this site. So when you sign in, if you don't have a user account, first of all, you need to create one. Okay, so they're going to ask you for your email address, create a password, and all of that. Then you're going to get a form that asks you to complete some information about your company. Now, if you believe that you're already WOSB certified, then you had to have already gone through SAM and you started this process already. So you may not get to this page. If you've already done this, then you can skip this part. But for those of you that have never done your WOSB, you need to realize that they have to make sure you are who you say you are. So if you haven't done SAM, go back and do your SAM registration. Do your SAM registration first, and then you come back to this page to set up a new registration account. So now, if you're new to this and you've set up a registration account, before you can get into Certify.SBA.gov to see your records, it's going to ask you to confirm specific information. It'll ask you for things like your DUNS number, your user registration information in SAM, that kind of thing. When you do that, it'll ask you to put in your DUNS number here, your EIN. They need some information to download your information from SAM. So if you haven't done SAM, this is not going to work for you. So you need to do SAM first. You also need to go into your SAM to get your MPIN unless you have your DUNS number, your EIN number, and your MPIN all in one document, which I suggest that you do anyway, because you're going to use your MPIN a lot of times when you deal with things that have to do with SAM, which everything goes back to SAM. And I'll briefly talk about SAM just a little bit. So I know some of you don't know what SAM is. So if you do, you'll need to find one of our other trainings to talk to you about what SAM is. That's the System Awards Management Program for federal certifications. So you start there. That is the beginning. You fill out all your information and you're all set. Then you can start applying for certifications like WOSB. So when you put in your information here on the profile form, what's going to happen is there's a little button down towards the bottom that will ask you to submit. Once you submit, it will say to you, please don't submit this button unless this is your business or your account. If this is not your business and you're doing it for someone else, you have authorization, you can go ahead and submit. And what's going to happen is it's going to find you in the system. And then when it finds you and it connects all of your information, it's going to say you had a successful setup. And it'll show you your information, your contact, emails, that kind of thing. Now, next you'll see your business profile. As you can see, there's a whole dashboard up here with information, but this is where your business profile will show up. Your DUNS number, your EIN, your telephone contact, and all of that, your mailing address, your street address. Now, if you haven't done anything yet, then you won't have any documents in here. But let's say you have already done your WOSB before, then you will see your documents, your archived documents here. But that does not mean that you need to use the same information. You need to make sure all of your documents are updated in this process. So even if you have some documents in here from 2011 or 2014, that have been migrated over, you still need to do this over again. Make sure those documents are correct, make sure they're updated, make sure nothing has changed with your business. If it has, then you will be actually uploading some new documents. Now, one more thing about the archive documents is that you can reuse them for different situations. So if you're doing your WOSB contract or your WSB setup in here for opportunities, then you can use old documents if they have not changed. But if they've changed, you need to add some new documents and make sure that you're using the most updated documents. You can also use those documents for your 8A if you decide to later apply for your 8A. Okay, so once you get inside, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to show, now here, you know, we've already chosen WOSB. We've been in and out of there because we've been using this as an example. So we've been in the WOSB, and we've been in there by clicking on this link that will show up on your dashboard. But if you notice, there's also an 8A link right here. There would be an option for me to start 8A if I wanted to start my 8A process. And all of these documents that I just mentioned on the previous slide are in your archive. So some of those documents you could use for your 8A process as well. Even if you wanted to get into a mentor protege program. So any types of programs that you want to participate in could show up here. They're migrating everything over, so eventually everything that you want to do, it will show in one file on Certify.gov or Certify.SBA.gov. Okay? Now, when you get inside, you will see the WOSB application once you click on that WOSB link. So you have to click on the WOSB link first, and it will ask you, do you accept the terms and conditions for WOSB? You click accept, and it will take you on into the WOSB application process. So you see, once I clicked on accept, then it showed me the link, and it showed me that this is the initial, meaning the first time I've started the WOSB process. But if you've done the process before and you're updating, it will not show initial any longer. It'll show a different, it might say update or something like that. Now, you remember how I said when you first get inside, it will ask you, what do you want to do? Do I want to start my 8A and just leave this WSB alone? Or do I want to continue with the WSB, but yet I need to do the EDWOSB as well? What I need to do is first go through the WSB process and then come back and do the EDWOSB. Okay, you need to review the requirements, and you need to make sure that you have everything that they ask for with the WOSB, or the EDWOSB, I should say. But right now, we're just going to go through the WOSB self-certification process. Now, some of you, as I mentioned in part 1, you may have a third party that did your update. And if that third party agrees to keep your certification updated, that's fine. All you need to do is come in here and make sure that you take the letter or the information that they give to you from the third party and update it in the system. Make sure it's all connected. I also mentioned in part 1 how the third party does not do your EDWOSB. You have to do that. The government does not approve the third parties to do your EDWOSB. You have to do that part. Okay, so you need to click on this link to see what the requirements are. And generally speaking, they're just asking you for a financial statement, which you actually complete inside the WOSB process. Okay, so once you get done with this WOSB portion, you come back to your dashboard and you click on EDWOSB, and it actually has you fill out the information about your personal profile as the business owner. And keep in mind, whenever you get a certification, your certifications are about you. They follow you, not just your business. They want to make sure that you really are economically disadvantaged. So they're going to ask about things like your income, your liability, your assets, things like that. So you should have all of your credit card information, like how much you owe, do you have car notes, what are your liabilities altogether. You have to be very specific. They used to have us do a separate document, but it's no longer a new document. But once you've done the WSB portion, you will come back here, click this link, EDWOSB, and then hit New Application, and you can walk through that process. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and complete our WOSB certification process. So this is going to show you all of the areas that will come up on the document. One of the first things it's going to ask you is, when you get into the application process, is it's very orderly, it's very easy to use. All you have to do is answer every question that is applicable to you, and based on the information, it's going to ask you questions based on the previous information that has been put in the system. It's going to ask you questions about you and your company that would be applicable. And every time you answer the questions, all you have to do is hit continue. So one of the first things it's going to ask you is your certification a third-party certification? Now, what if you did a third-party certification the first time, but you don't want to go back to them? You don't have to go back to them. You can go ahead and do this certification process on your own. But that's one of the first things it's going to ask you is this a third-party certification? After that, if you say no, that's fine. Then it's going to kind of change the process a little bit, because your process as a third party is going to be different than your process as self-certification. The next question it's going to ask you is about 8A. Are you an 8A participant? Now, even if you're going through the 8A process, you are not approved yet. Otherwise, it would show in here that you're already 8A. It would show in your SAM that you're already 8A. So in most cases, for most of you, the answer is no. And because you are not an 8A, it's going to take you to a different self-certification process. If you were 8A, it would ask you some other questions that would apply to you as 8A. Okay? So all you need to do is follow the side view over here to the left, answer each question, because every time you answer a question, it's going to move the section on up. And if you are following this and you've logged into your or your Certify.SBA.gov account, you will see exactly what I mean. Even though it looks easy, it still requires you to be very detailed. So remember I said this is a picture of the questions that it will ask. Remember I said it's going to ask you, is the qualifying individual currently certified by the 8A program? If that answer is no, then it's going to take you through a different route. Okay? Most of you, the answer is going to be no. If the answer is yes, you need to make sure you are totally approved before you answer that question yes, because it's going to look for other information if that answer is yes. And then for the business, it's going to move to the next set of questions. It's going to want to have you answer as to whether or not you're a corporation, an S corporation, or a regular C corporation. If you are a partnership, you click on the link for whichever applies to your company. Okay, so if you're an LLC, you would click that one, because your questions and your answers are going to be different if you're a corporation as opposed to a partnership. Okay, and then control is the next section. And by the way, every time you finish one section, it's going to allow you to click continue. So you come down to the bottom after you've answered the questions and you click continue. The next section is control. It's going to ask you about who has control over the company and, are you in full management control? You must be in full management control. You cannot share that responsibility. You don't have to have a technical license to be in full management control. You just need to be the person running the business. You also need to be the highest paid. You also cannot be a part of a company that is your parent company. Like us, we have parent companies. So the question is our parent company woman-owned or not? And if it's not woman-owned, then we would not qualify. I talked to some of you about that in part 1. So just keep that in mind, because sometimes they don't explain to you exactly what that means. Are you a citizen? Are you legally a citizen? Were you born here, or are you now a citizen because you went through a process to become a citizen? That is one of the qualifying things that can make a difference between a woman-owned business and a woman-owned small business. That's one of them. You must be a citizen. If you're not a citizen, you cannot apply for this program. Okay? So each one of these you will click on. It's very easy to use, and it'll take you through the full process. Okay? Then it'll ask you to review all of your questions. If some of your answers are wrong, and you do need to go back to review your answers. You want to make sure this is accurate. If some of your answers are incorrect or wrong, then you need to correct them. Okay? And then as you go through the questions, it'll get you to the point where it's a signature page, and all you have to do is sign electronically. It'll ask you for initials, and it'll ask you to sign. Now, I just took some snapshots of the different situations just so that you can see what it looks like when you get inside. It's easier for me to have taken the snapshots than to actually log in and walk through, because it slows down the system. But this is exactly what you will see. Remember I talked to you about the third party? So if it's no, then again, it'll walk you through the process as a self-certification person who's doing self-certification, and you don't need to answer any other questions about third party. Again, this is one for third party, declined. One of the questions they ask you, if you say that you went through a third party, this would be a yes answer to third party. The next question, if you answer yes to the third party, is, has an SBA or third party certifier declined to certify you? If that is the case, then you must answer yes. If that's not the case, then you answer no. These are just a couple of things that I thought were important to help you understand the difference and why it's important that you answer these questions accurately. I already mentioned the fact that if you did not have your certification done by a third party, that you'll be asked about whether or not you're a corporation, a partnership, or you have a limited liability company. Okay, so we already talked about walking through all the steps of the application. Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it is very simple. Just take your time. It doesn't take a lot of time to answer the questions. However, it does take time for you to upload the documents. That is why in part 1, I reviewed with you what the documents are. You need to have those documents ready and already uploaded in the system, so that you don't have to keep going back and forth. One of the reasons people don't do things correctly and they get frustrated is because they're not organized in the beginning. So you need to look at the document list that I discussed with you in part 1 and make sure that you have all of your documents in front of you before you do your update. And by the way, you are required, as mentioned in part 1, to do an annual update to make sure that everything is correct. So when you have all of your documents in order, you're going to go to Update Documents up there in the dashboard. You're going to go to Update Documents. It's actually going to prompt you to do this, so you don't have to look for it. It's going to prompt you after the signature to go and update your documents. You're going to get a button that allows you to click on the button, and all you're going to do is find that document in your files on your own computer. So you need to also make sure that those documents, I probably should have told you this in part 1, but you need to make sure that those documents are labeled by the list of what they're asking for. So if it's articles of incorporation, because you are a corporation, then it should be labeled articles of incorporation, okay? It should be labeled by your company name and your articles of incorporation. And each document should be that way. It's so that you can identify them very quickly when you need to, because you may use them for another program. And if they're already in there and they haven't changed and they're updated, all you need to do is reuse them. Now, the page that you see right now is the system-generated letter that you will get once you've submitted your signature. You've answered all the questions, your signature is submitted, you've initialed it, and you've uploaded your documents. If you do not upload your documents, you are not completed with the process. You haven't finished the process. But when you do upload your documents after the application is complete, you've signed it electronically, you upload your documents, it's going to allow you to submit everything at once. So if you have to get out and come back, you can get out and come back. But once submitted, you can't take anything back. So you need to make sure that you are ready when you sit down to do this, especially if it's an annual review. What if you didn't have it done correctly before, but now you're redoing it? So make sure you have everything together. I'm not sure how long it takes for you to get this letter, but it should be pretty quick. Okay? You should see this within a few days, and you should set it on your calendar to come back and check and make sure that you have a system-generated letter. Now, let's talk about the SAM registration part for WOSB. As I mentioned, a lot of people don't understand what SAM is, but SAM is the beginning of everything. So if you haven't done SAM, that's the first thing you need to do. You will not get this far. You will barely get in if you haven't done your SAM. But SAM is the foundation for all 650,000 businesses that are actually doing business with the federal government or that would like to. So most of you are familiar with what this is, but it's not a place where, you know, they necessarily will market to you. It's a place where they go to look and make sure that you're in the system, that your documents are complete, and that you are legit to do business with the federal government. They can see your NAICS codes. They can see pretty much everything about you. They can make sure that you've accepted a lot of the agreements and the terms and the FAR statements and things like that. So if you ever want to look yourself up, just go look yourself up in SAM. They can pull a report from SAM if they're looking for certain types of businesses within NAICS codes, but they can also do that in the Small Business Dynamic database. And if you are a small business, and I know that you are if you're trying to do WSB, or if you are a veteran or a hub zone or an 8A, then you would be in the Small Business Dynamic Search. They can also, and when I say they, I'm referring to the contracting officers, they can also find you and locate you in the Small Business Dynamic Search. You usually get to the Small Business Dynamic Search after you've done everything in SAM. Then they ask you, do you want to go into the Small Business Dynamic Search to update your profile? And yes, you want to do that. And we probably will do a session on that. That's a great idea, because some people don't even realize that they can go in and make their Small Business Dynamic Search look much more attractive to contracting officers in their industry. You can put in your performance history and things like that. So how does SAM relate to you doing the WOSB other than your initial interaction with trying to do business with the government? Well, this is how it looks. These codes, and most of you know about the codes, but you don't realize that these codes must be in SAM. They must be in SAM to ensure that your connection to the WSB program is properly connected, because remember, you have specific codes that you can get contracts under that are set aside just for women. So WOSB works that way, and so does EDWOSB. So if you are an EDWOSB, as I talked about earlier, let's say you feel that it's appropriate or it's better for you to be an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business. You can go back into your account after you're done with your WOSB, and you can process the EDWOSB paperwork. It won't take you much longer. You just need to have your documents together. But you, as an EDWOSB, can bid on anything that is under EDWOSB as well as anything that is under WOSB. But a WOSB only on the reverse end cannot bid on anything for EDWOSB. So EDWOSB, you need to remember to put in codes for NAICS codes for WOSB and EDWOSB. But for WOSB, you can only use WOSB codes. Okay? It's very important that you have the right codes in SAM. And it also helps contracting officers to find you under the appropriate codes. Now, you will hear me sometimes say that contracting officers are not always using the right codes, but we can talk to you about that, about how to work with that. But in this case, they have to use the right codes if they want to set aside for women. So we have to work with you on that so that you understand how to guide contracting officers to set aside more opportunities for you and your company. That's a whole nother training, okay? But the concept of how this works by regulation is not just a concept, but by regulation it has to be done a certain way. And you will find that sometimes you actually have to educate the contracting officers. So just remember, after everything is done, you go into SAM and you update, but you cannot and you should not be in SAM as a WOSB or an EDWOSB unless you've done all these things. They are doing audits to find out who is doing it right and who's not. And what they're doing is searches on eligibility. And when I say they, I'm talking about the SBA. The SBA, as I mentioned in part 1, is responsible for managing this program and making sure that everyone is on the up and up. Okay, so you're going to update your SAM. So log into your SAM, and yes, You do have to walk through every question. It won't take that long. It might take you about 20 minutes. It's very annoying, but you have to do it. There is no shortcut. I've asked 1,000 times and there are no shortcuts. So when you get in there, you do just what I said. You know, I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but it is important that you have these codes in your system correctly. Now, one other thing I want to mention is, does that mean that you take out all of your other codes? No, it does not. You leave in your other codes, but you're making sure that you have the correct WOSB codes. Okay? And the correct WOSB codes would simply mean that they're just part of all of the codes you have in the system. But when a contracting officer is looking to set aside something, they're looking at your WOSB codes because that's what they have to look at. Remember, your other codes that you have in there are for regular small business opportunities, or it could be for your 8A opportunities or any other type of opportunity, your hub zone. Whatever it may be, you can have them both. So number 5, I'm just reiterating, if you're an EDWOSB, you put in both EDWOSB codes and WOSB codes. At the certification point, you're asked, where it asks you, are you a minority-owned business, a WOSB business? Make sure that you recheck, uncheck and check that WOSB and that EDWOSB if you're an EDWOSB. Okay? It'll ask you right around the middle point. I wish I could pinpoint exactly where it is, but you know, maybe next time I'll take a picture of that. But just make sure you look for that. Your NAICS codes update will come pretty easily and pretty quick, but you look for that point where it asks you during the SAM registration process, because what you're doing in SAM is updating. Make sure you look for that question. Are you a WOSB, a woman-owned small business? And then check all of the appropriate boxes. And again, if you're an ED, you should check both boxes, not just one. And then you complete the rest of the update, save your information. You will get notification when it's complete, and you will know that you are now legitimately and by regulation set up as a WOSB or an EDWOSB. Okay. Now you can begin looking for contracting opportunities. And I will just say, I really would like to see us do better with this. We're going to see what we can do to be a part of helping women to look for bids more. And there's so many opportunities out there, but remember, and we're going to go through this in the set-aside training, contracting officers are not going to set aside if they don't see you out there bidding. Why would they do that? Even though they need to spend hundreds of thousands, all of the agencies, they have to spend 5% of the budget with women-owned small businesses. That would be WOSBs, not women-owned businesses, but women-owned small businesses. There's a reason why this program was put into place back in 2011. It was to help women-owned small businesses get to that next level, $4 million contracts, $6 million contracts. So many of the federal agencies, they actually have contracts just for you in their states. And sometimes you'll see opportunities just for small business. You could ask them how to set aside for woman-owned. And they may just say yes because you're helping them to meet their goals. Okay, then make sure you're using and looking up FBO.gov and other resources to begin locating woman-owned small business set-aside contracts and EDWOSB set-aside contracts. And again, we will talk with you about that in another training session. Look for that training. It may be available already, but it's so important that we take advantage of this opportunity. And then you're going to just make sure all of your documents are properly submitted. Just check your Certify.SBA.gov account before bidding on something or after you've bidded on something. Just make sure it is correct and updated. Okay? If your offer is accepted, you'll have to give the contracting officer access to your file. There's a process for that. They have a manual. They know how to do it. And if they don't, then you can email me, or you could talk to SBA.gov and find out how that process works. And then the contracting officer can get in there just to make sure that you are legitimately a WOSB. He or she, as a contracting officer, is responsible for making sure that your eligibility is in line and that you are truly a WOSB or an EDWOSB. Again, watch out for some of our training that's coming up. It's all free to you as a client and as a customer. Proposal development, understanding set-asides. We're putting it all out there for you on our Facebook, and we're also putting it in our YouTube, and we'll start doing a much better job of making sure you guys are connecting with these things and you have different ways of getting into the system. But we have so much great stuff coming up for you, and I'm really excited about this free business training program with government contracting. I'm very excited, but I just want you to know all of our sessions are recorded, and we're going to do as good a job as we can to make sure that you guys are getting this information, because it can be very frustrating trying to navigate through the system. And believe it or not, there are not a lot of companies that know how to break it down step by step, and they charge you a fortune to learn these things, and we want to find other ways to connect with you. So thank you for joining me today, and don't forget to list your business on our B2B exchange at fedbizexchange.com. And the reason we want you to do that is because when you get opportunities, you may have an opportunity to work with other primes just like yourself that's looking for help in subcontracting areas, and even just doing business with each other, period. We are really trying to champion the idea of small business to small business doing business together and doing big business together. So with that said, I'm Michelle Brown. Thank you for joining me today, and I will connect you to my podcast as well. I look forward to seeing you in the next training session. And that's it for me. I'm out, and I will talk to you in the next session and on my podcast. Have a great day.